We have 4 speakers here today, starting with, on this item, starting with Dan Passel. There you are, Dan. Sorry, you were blocked from my line of view. I know you know the rules, so I will just wait for you to get settled in, and then I will start the timer.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of Council, on Sunday evening I sent you a document raising 5 sets of concerns and questions about the staff report before you today. They were about 1, the consultation process that gave rise to the report, 2, the publication of certain personal information about submitters, 3, questions about the notion of a representative speaker, 4, the disempowering of citizens and organizations, and 5, the empowering of members of Council. On Sunday, I suggested changes and deletions to various subsections of the bylaw. I'm happy to discuss these with Council, but I'll use my 5 minutes to cover just a few of the concerns raised on Sunday and add some fresh ones. With regard to the disempowering of citizens and organizations, this bylaw, if passed, would end the established practice of allowing citizens at public hearings to speak more than once, provided they have something new to say each time. On Monday night, Stephen Bohus, who is well informed about 3D visualization issues, asked to be put on the end of the list of the 181 speakers registered for the Rise Alliance public hearing. The Mayor said Monday and again last night that if Council approves this bylaw, then it will be applied to that public hearing, so Mr. Bohus won't get to speak again. Is it okay to change public hearing procedures in the middle of a hearing? According to subsection 18.7 of the proposed bylaw, anything submitted before 5 p.m. on the Thursday preceding a public hearing will be put in a file and circulated to Council by Friday noon and then posted on the web by midnight that day. Subsection 18.8 states that any public comments submitted after the Thursday will, quote, be added to the file, circulated to Council, and posted on the City website prior to any Council motion regarding the proposed bylaw. That's prior to any Council motion about the bylaw. Now, what this subsection doesn't say is how quickly public comments will be sent to Council and posted. The proposed bylaw allows someone to speak more than once, allows someone wanting to speak more than once to submit further public comments during the public hearing, albeit brief ones, as Councillor Carr has noted. But the bylaw offers no guarantee that such comments will be sent to Council and put on the web before the end of the hearing. I'd encourage you to look at this subsection. It does not specify this. Moreover, what happens when a public hearing has not 181 speakers, but say 10 or 6? How does someone submit public comments within a hearing in such cases? Also, even assuming public comments were available close to immediately, how are Council and citizens to listen to speeches and read comments at the same time? So, the bylaw removes the opportunity to speak more than once, as Councillor Carr said, but doesn't offer speakers an alternative, immediate way to express their views to Council and others during a hearing. Regarding the empowering of members of Council, I drew your attention on Sunday to subsection 18.14f, which is now E because of revisions to the bylaw. This subsection empowers the Chair to modify procedures whenever he or she determines it is appropriate to do so for the whole bylaw. This is a great deal of latitude which the Chair can apparently exercise without even requiring a vote of other members of Council. Nothing in the current procedure bylaw gives meeting chairs this kind of power, so I'd suggest deleting or at least restricting it. On Sunday, I also suggested deleting subsection 18.25 and .26, which grants members of Council the ability to vote on the outcome of a public hearing despite missing portions of the hearing, as long as they've been granted a 10-minute recess to receive a public hearing summary report, which the bylaw defines as, quote, an oral or written report from the Director of Planning or another city official. If I am given the opportunity, I'd love to explain more about some problems with this particular proposal. But in conclusion, I've noted today and on Sunday that the bylaw contains problematic elements, including the apparent publishing of people's email addresses, a reduction in citizen speaking opportunities compared to existing public hearing processes. The bylaw doesn't say that public comments received after the Thursday preceding a public hearing would be sent to Council and put on the web during the hearing. There's the granting of sweeping powers to the chair of public hearings, this issue about granting members of council the right to vote in a public hearing, and the plan to use this bylaw in a public hearing that's already underway. I'm concerned about the lack of time given to citizens to review this bylaw, which has considerable implications for the city's public hearings process. As such, I'd ask council to defer its consideration of the report, and failing that, I'd ask it to consider my suggested changes and deletions to the proposed bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fass. Any questions for Mr. Fass? Seeing, oh, yep, there's Councillor Carr. There you go.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm intrigued by the notion of deferring this and putting it for some form of public consultation. Do you have any idea around what you would think to be adequate public consultation?
Well, firstly, unlike a similar kind of motion about granting people issues to speak, and what comes to mind here is the use of structures on the street of political expression, where you got quite a bit of feedback, and the bylaw actually got amended by various councillors in response to that feedback. There doesn't seem to be any time sensitivity attached to this motion. So from this point of view, why not defer and allow some more feedback? I'd like to think that these issues that I've raised, asking about why the chair of public hearings has been given these powers over the entire bylaw, cannot be reconsidered by staff and others and looked at carefully, so that just those areas where leeway should be given to the chair is written into the bylaw and so forth. At the very least, if this can just be deferred, and the deferral can be publicized so that interested parties can offer comments, perhaps to the authors of the report, and we come up with some kind of process here. I just do have to say that I'm really concerned that what's being proposed here is a bylaw concerning a meeting that attracts hundreds and hundreds of people. Quite a few of them, when they come to speak, say this is their first time at council. And yet we were told that there was this review of existing practices without any publication of those practices in the staff report. There was mention of some citizens being consulted, but who? So there was some kind of consultation. If there was some kind of consultation, could we please defer and open this up a little bit to others who, given a little bit of time, might have some further input into this?
You've got 2.5 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Actually, not just appropriate to you, I'm sorry, but Madam Chair, I've just been informed that the council video is not working in terms of public broadcast. Other people have
we'll look into it.
Thank you.
You're done on questions, Phil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fass. Joseph Jones is the next speaker, but he has emailed us all to say that thanks to the snow, which is much heavier up where he and I both live, he will not be able to make it today. So he did send a note that's on your email if you want to check that out. And the next speaker is Randy Helton. Councillor Deal, do you mind taking the chair for 5 minutes of coffee break for me? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I begin, I'd like to actually have it confirmed whether the public can view this meeting by internet. I think it's a very important topic. Could that be confirmed? I received a call that... pardon? Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Check it out. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just think it's an important topic. So thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Randy Helton. I speak as a citizen of Vancouver and also as the coordinator of City Hall Watch. I'm here today to ask you not to adopt these recommended amendments to the procedural bylaw. I think that this topic has come up far too abruptly There's absolutely no rush and no reason that this has to be adopted today. And I note that if adopted, the proposal is for them to enter into force today. I think that's far too abrupt. There's been virtually no advance notice to the public, and I'll tell you why that's so important. I think it's important for the Council and the public to look at how these proposals can be abused, not only by the current Council, but by the future Councils, once they're written into the law. There may not be that attention to that, but you have to look at unintended consequences. As the previous speaker mentioned, it appears that these amendments give greater power to Council and take away the power of citizens. Public hearings are, after the election, this is probably the next most important tool of our democracy. They give the chance for the public to speak eye to eye with the City Council, for the Council to hear directly from the people information and their comments and opinions about what's important to them. The public hearing provides a very valuable check and balance in our system. The public needs a chance to directly address the Council. There are some problems that were mentioned also by the previous speaker, and I won't go into the detail with them, but for me, one of the most important things is it appears to give the opportunity for if you look at the worst possible case, up to 5 members of the Council could be absent from almost the entire public hearing and then get a 5-minute review, a 10-minute summary by the Director of Planning or another senior official. I think that needs to be clarified. One question that comes up now is, while we have no Director of Planning, who would be doing that? And I think there's some concern about who is doing the summary presentation. Could be many hours and thousands of words presented, summarized in 10 minutes in a highly filtered fashion. That requires further discussion. Another thing is that the chance has been removed for speakers to speak more than once. And whether or not this is the common practice in other parts of the city, it has not been the tradition in Vancouver. And I think more discussion is needed before that opportunity is removed from the public. I think that more time should be taken for this. I would suggest at least 3 months. There should be more information provided to the public and to Council. There apparently was a review of the practices in other cities of Canada. I think that information should be summarized in a report, so not only the Council but also the public can review those points. There should also be a more complete discussion of the potential loopholes and problems with this. It's my understanding from listening this morning that even the Council did not receive a report from an oral report from staff. It appears to me that it was just questions directly. That's what appeared to me. So I think that there should be a public meeting on this with a chance for questions and answers and then revisions to the document. I mentioned also that this is so important now because we know that there are some very important decisions coming up that will have public hearings. There's one right now going on with the RISE Alliance proposal at Kingsway and Broadway, 180 speakers. There's also other major rezoning decisions coming up this year. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. There are also 4 community planning processes beginning right now: Marpole, Downtown Eastside, the West End, and Grandview. We're going to be paying millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on these very important community planning processes. And these new amendments will apply to those public hearings when they come up. And there's even talk now of rezoning large tracts of the entire city. I think that giving more power to a council that was elected by between 14 and 18% of the eligible voters of the city, largely funded by developers, unions, and foreign interests, I don't think it's appropriate to give more power to the council and take away from the public. So, in fact, I also like to close just by saying that I'm interested in knowing who actually writes this kind of stuff, that these recommendations will strengthen the public hearing process and improve communication between all participants. It almost sounds like Orwellian because it sounds so wonderful, but in fact, it is the opposite. So please do not approve this today and allow more time for proper public discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hilton. You don't have any questions. I did, however, check on my way back from the bathroom, 3 different browsers, and the feed's working fine, sound and everything. So nobody's emailing me about it, so I'm assuming whoever called you about it is doing fine. Okay, next speaker and last speaker is Stephen Bohaus.
I don't have a PowerPoint or computer model now, so don't worry. No. But thank you, Chair, Mayor, and Council for this opportunity to speak on actually a very important motion that will have broad impacts. I'm actually directly affected in this motion because I asked to speak a second time, and I'm not going to go into the details of that. But I think in 5 minutes, it's not enough, and I've spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of my own volunteer time doing analysis, and in a 5-minute window of opportunity, I structured my presentation so I actually have 2 parts. If you look at the opportunity for staff can't defend themselves. So I've heard the chair say, well, don't say that because staff can't defend themselves. It's also the question of the public being able to defend themselves, because if there are statements that are being attributed to that member of the public, then they can't respond. But they could respond in a 5-minute second time opportunity to speak, and also if there's no opportunity to go back and forth on a second time speaker. There are so many issues that are raised in the whole process of a public hearing that you can potentially gain a lot more by allowing the second time speaker. If there are these misrepresentations of, let's say, my work, and I feel that there's no retraction that's coming from staff, then I'd like to have that opportunity for a second time. There's also the question about predictability. So if you have an item with hundreds of speakers, it would be good to know when the future dates for a public hearing will be. So if these are already penciled in kind of, if these dates are needed, then the public will know that, well, maybe there's going to be a time sometime in April or whatever. And then you would know for the future that you can plan your schedule ahead of time and not find out during the night of the reconvened public hearing when the next meeting will be if it's needed. In terms of the submissions, 2 pages is really not enough. If you have photographs, graphics, computer graphics, you can't put that in 2 pages. I know there's a concern about words and so on, but I think there should be a distinction made between actual photographs, which can be looked at very quickly, and words that will take time to read. So I would actually encourage Council to really look at the ramifications, and especially consider not applying new rules to a public hearing that might be in process. Let's see how much time. Okay, I do have some minor concerns. There are actually some financial implications in terms of staff overtime. And if I share my information and it's submitted and it's summarized by a civil servant, I would like to see that summary. Because there's this check and balance that if you spend hundreds and hundreds of hours of your own time putting together an analysis and it gets summarized into 2 lines, I think that might be too much filtering there. And there is the whole issue of, I do read that there's a section that says strategic analysis that based on the review, which included past feedback, so on, but the citizens are specifically mentioned that there was information that was collected. I don't know of what kind of information went into this in terms of citizen feedback, but I will say that I think there is an opportunity for a much larger discussion. The public hearing process has actually worked quite well in Vancouver, up to date, and I think many of the practices that have been established and maybe not codified officially should remain. And I would suggest that Council defer this back to staff, make a wide public discussion on the matter, and go forward from there and not approve this motion in its current form. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bohos, you do have questions from Councillor Jang, and after that, Councillor Carr. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know how I did that.
No, the mics are all kind of funny when you press the button that goes on. Thank you very much for coming. And so one of the things you said, talking about coming on a second time or a third time or a fourth time. And quite frankly, I find I get more out of your presentations when you send it to us later when I have time to study it, because you do put so much time into it. And that sometimes, so I guess the question I have is, and this is one for staff too, so in the written submission portion afterwards, it is limited to 2 pages here, but we should make allowances for a large number of graphics. For example, Mr. Bohos provides graphics and things like that, which I do find useful.
We're gonna ask Mr. Bohos questions, and then we'll come back on.
I realize that.
Okay.
I'm just really tired because we had a long public hearing last night. I had 3 hours sleep, and this is part of the reasons why we need 10-minute breaks sometimes, is because then we can actually get something to eat, and this is part of the issue as well, I think. Do you think? Now I've lost my train of thought. So in writing, so do you think when you send, do you think that being able to send material is as good as you speaking to it just for 5 minutes? So if here you came on 3 times, 15 minutes in a row, talking about the same stuff, as opposed to you sending me speaking 1 time and sending me a very well written, which usually is very well written, your stuff, to me, is there any qualitative difference?
Well,
I know you can't fight with staff.
Okay.
We're not here to fight with staff in public hearings, and that's very clear. But rather, because the whole point of public hearings is for me to understand what you're trying to say. And so when it's in front of me and I can take it back to my office, if it's a 2-day public, or even sit here for much longer and look at it, it's far more useful to me personally as someone who has to understand what you're saying, as opposed to you standing there. It's all kind of disjointed.
Okay, and actually you've raised some very good points, that a member of the public makes an initial presentation, then provides a written submission. But to even make that more powerful, if there's an opportunity for a single time speaking to that submission a second time, then members of council have the opportunity to review the written submission, the graphics, and then there's a clarification given to what was in writing, and there's the opportunity to go back and forth and clarify, and then you've got a much fuller picture of what the written submission really is about and the key points.
I tend to find that written submissions I actually understand far better because it's there and I've had time to study it. It's personal experience as someone who sits in one of these chairs. The other thing of issue is I know that many times hearings go quite late, and you've been a veteran of many here in chambers. And certainly around 10, 11 o'clock, I'm really fading. And you or someone else comes on for the 3rd or 4th time, I don't know if I'm actually even awake. I may be there occupying a chair, but I hate to think that somebody who stayed as late, and I'm just lost it because I've had, like right now I'm quite tired. I've only had about 3 hours sleep, and I'm back in here listening to people again. Am I really paying attention in the way I should be? And I think, how do you feel when you're there at 11 o'clock, you've come on for the 3rd time or something like that with very detailed graphics or whatever it may be, and you look around the chambers and we're all starting to fade pretty quick. I mean, does that really enhance the public, discourse any, in your mind?
Well, that's actually very good. Actually, I was fading quite rapidly during my presentation because I had only 2 hours of sleep for the last few nights doing all these computer graphics. So I sympathize there. So sometimes we're in the same boat. And here I would actually suggest that the procedure bylaws have the 10 p.m. cutoff where mayor and council decide whether you extend, and maybe at 10 p.m. you decide not to extend because everyone's so tired, and then we'll give the due time for speakers to come up at a later time.
Okay. And so part of that, too, again, is part of having the powers of the chair. And we are already, some people have objected to. We're already doing that now by extending and going extra nights that we don't normally do. I mean, even for budget, we're having extra council meetings to accommodate people, and that's part. So the other thing, too, so I understand your everybody's discomfort or wariness over this, the summary of, say, I stepped out for 10 minutes, like at first you saw me get out because I had an emergency at home to go deal with, you're not very trustworthy, perhaps, of how the staff might summarize, or you want to see what the staff summarizes. Would it be better? What I tend to do in practice is I actually watch the video stream. So if I miss somebody or miss something, I go back and actually watch it. And 10 minutes is about my attention span, sitting in front of a screen watching it. So it seemed quite reasonable to me, but you don't think that's good enough, or do you think we should have it embedded in the changes that we should be watching the video stream, not just relying on a summary?
Sorry, Councillor Jing, I was dealing with a little tech issue, not the web actually, but another one. You are well over time. So, Mr. Rowehouse, if you want to answer that question, and then I'm going to move us to Councillor Karps.
Yeah, actually, I do want the clarification. So, with the video, I actually find it more accessible if it's in a YouTube form or something where it's easier to skip. And if you have a Macintosh, you need a plug-in and so on.
The question is for me, the one that you're trying to tell us what you were thinking about. Okay. Right now,
Councillor,
hang on.
Councillor Jing, it's not up to me to hang on. You are over time, so there are other councillors waiting.
5 minutes is annoying for me too.
Okay. You can always come back on, but I do have other councillors who've waited patiently. Councillor Carr.
Yes, patiently. Thank you. Okay. One thing that I wanted to be aware of, and thank you for coming to presenting, is in the changes there's also, and we've not mentioned this so far, it's not just 5 minutes, but if you represent 3 or more people or a group, it's 8 minutes. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that as well. Okay. Yeah.
And I guess that will apply if there's an ongoing public hearing to anyone representing a group, so that 8 minutes will apply.
Yeah. I just want, okay. Do you have any guidelines around or what you would like to see in terms of PowerPoint submissions? Any thoughts to that, or graphic submissions? If it should just be added in. I mean, right now it says 2 pages, but if we add in and graphics, photos, PowerPoints, would that satisfy you?
And absolutely, I would even suggest to look at the future and say, 3D models and Google Earth or any other multimedia sources that staff can access there and review. And I think maybe the word limit is a concern, but I think that graphics should be more open-ended.
It's worth 1,000 words, so they say. There's also comments in the introductory part of the presentation that we've had from staff that talk about updating and modernizing. This is on, so it's on the beginning of the administrative report prior to the specifics of the bylaws on strategic analysis, phase 1 recommendations. Yeah.
Okay, which page is that?
Well,
okay. A2. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, there is definitely a step in the right direction there to open it up, and some speakers missed their turn on previous public hearings because they don't know when they're coming up. So that will definitely help improve the process, so people know when they can come. And also, if you have flexibility with people able to swap their places, because I know my friend's going to come and speak, but they're ahead of me, but they can't make it. So the flexibility and swapping places between 2 consenting members of the public, maybe it should be considered as well. And in terms of the procedure, it would be very good to see the dates that have already been penciled in case a very long public hearing has to go on. So I think there was an example with the casino where we did see a few days that were penciled in ahead of time, and it gives members of the public more predictability on how to plan their lives.
Okay, so maybe you have some comments that you could submit on that. Okay, one final question. Regarding individuals who come to speak to public hearings and then put themselves on the list for another 5 minutes, would you be satisfied if it was a case where a person could speak, could provide for additional resources, and have one more 5-minute opportunity at the end? Like not an unlimited number, but just one? Do you think that that is fair public process?
I absolutely would support that as a step in the right direction and in terms of codifying the existing practices, yes.
Okay. And in your experience of attending these hearings, how many people end up putting, in general, put their names on multiple times? Are we talking lots of people or, a few people?
It's very uncommon. So it depends on the hearing, and each hearing has its own character. But you're looking at, I'll just say less than 5% that I've seen in terms of people coming up. But that would be actually a good statistic to research, perhaps, for staff.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Carr. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, just so that I can confirm that I heard something, you say that you were concerned that when somebody says something that might be incorrect about your presentation or the work that you presented, that you want the opportunity to be able to correct that. I'm not referring to staff. I'm talking about other people who have come up to speak, and that what you want is the opportunity to correct a misunderstanding or a misrepresentation of your work. But you want to be able to do it in a verbal way, not in a written way. Or did you want both opportunities? I'm trying to figure out what's best.
Well, it depends on the length of the hearing. So if it is a very large hearing, then it would be good to be able to have the opportunity to speak a second time at the end of, let's say, a one-night hearing. In the event of a longer hearing, then the written and the second time opportunity to speak would be very beneficial to, let's say, correct anything an architect or other members of the public have to say, yes.
So you're speaking of either correcting a misapprehension or coming back with something new that's been sparked by the actual hearing and just coming back once for 5 minutes. That's what you're referring to, just so that I have it all clear.
Yes, and also with staff there could be misunderstandings, and if work that you have, like that I've done, is submitted to council in a memo, and I haven't had a chance to comment on that memo prior, I think it is very useful to be able to speak and to respond to that.
Thank you, and thank you again for your commitment to the city. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for Councillor Ball. I had a couple questions, which might, I don't know, asking you to speak a bit from personal experience, and so I wanted to remind you you're very welcome not to answer questions if you'd prefer not to. I got the sense, and this sort of comes down to learning styles and presentation styles, but I got the sense that you personally may not feel comfortable submitting in writing, or maybe better expressed, you feel more comfortable submitting orally.
Well, I think sometimes the nature of my submission, I'm speaking to often computer graphics or photographs and so on, and I want to give that commentary. So I personally feel that to have a caption below a photograph might not convey the full breadth of what I'd like to say.
Okay. And can I ask, and again, you're more than welcome not to answer, but when you've learned things yourself, do you prefer that people present them orally or that you have written material to read, like in terms of your own retention of information? Do you have a preference either way?
I actually like both.
Okay.
And I do like the video, and I'd like to commend council for having years and years of archives available, and that is very, very helpful for everyone.
I would agree. Even on the public hearings I sit through, sometimes I need to go back to the archive to remember things start to blur together at some point in the day or evening. I could not remember a time, because you come to, I would say, the vast majority of public hearings that have speakers, you're one of them, and I couldn't actually remember a time where you didn't speak twice. Do you? I think you almost always end up back on. I couldn't actually think of a single time where you'd spoken and not gone back on the end.
I'll give you an example. At the casino, I only spoke once.
Okay. Right, that one was a little harder to remember. But you come for a lot of the 3, 4, 5 people speaker ones, or one speaker yourself who might go. Okay, so there is one, but I'm not misremembering this. You do often go back on the end when you're here.
I'd have to actually look through my own records to see when I went on for a second time, but there have been occasions where I've only spoken once for sure. Yes.
Okay. No, it's helpful. It does. I'm sure you can imagine with the volume, it can get a little blurry in our heads about specific details. You had talked about the ability, how important it is for you to be able to plan ahead. We actually have some urgent business today to set in stone some public hearing times and dates so that people can plan ahead. It is the number one complaint we get. I know the 4 of you who spoke or submitted today are all people who come to many public hearings, but for first-time or second-time speakers, number one complaint is, I was the number 3rd item on, the 2nd item, the same people kept speaking over and over again, and mine never even came on today. So how do we accommodate those people who have a reasonable expectation that, they might see 5 speakers and maybe that takes 2 hours, but it can end up taking 4 or 5 if those 5 people, filibuster essentially?
I'll just do something concrete, and this is not, I'm just pointing this out as nothing personal, but public hearing started recently, and there were, I think, 5 items prior to the item with many speakers that would go on. So in that case, maybe the scheduling is that a very large item that has, let's say, over 40 or 50 speakers signed up should have its own date. So that's the item that is at the start of a public hearing, and it's penciled in for that. And then you have other nights where you have these little items like tennis court bubbles or so on separately.
A big item for those 9 people, though.
It is very important, but then you gauge how you schedule the public hearing and which items you put on which nights on the level of interest and the number of speakers that have signed up.
But so if each speaker has a hard time, we can do that. These ones with more than 50, I think there's been maybe 5 in the 3.5 years I've been on council. So the more common thing is that it's 5 people who might look like they're going to take an hour, but actually end up taking 4 or 5 by virtue of each of them speaking half an hour, 45 minutes.
And there's actually another thing I'd like to add. In the opportunity of members of the public to just show up and sign up or to stand up before the chair calls, are there any more speakers a 3rd time? So you can't really predict if there are going to be another 10 people in the audience who will stand up at that time.
No, but by virtue of your strong familiarity with the process, by how many you attend, and I know because we're at the same hearings, that it's not that often that people just show up relative to how often it is that the same 5, 6, 7 people keep speaking at these things.
Well, there might be some merit in having the chair limit, let's say, a 3rd time speaker attempt there. And really the purpose of speaking a 2nd time is to bring you information into the debate, and I think I've always done that there. And because I realize council time is very precious and you have a lot of business to move on to. However, there is also the information that has to be discussed in a public manner.
I appreciate that. I think Mayor Robertson might have questions for...
This question for staff.
Okay, we're on to questions for staff. So Councillor Jang had a question that wasn't clarified. So if he comes back and wants to ask it of you, I might call you up again.
Actually, I just wanted to get the clarification, and Madam Chair, if you could repeat his question, because it was about staff or council reviewing the video. It is on that, but I wasn't quite sure of the question. So if
it was a 2.5-minute question, and it wandered a bit. So when he's back in the room, I might call you back up again and get him to re-articulate it. But we'll go to staff now and then get him back up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.